ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यनिजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततन्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै। So welcome you all in this Patron family camp. We'll be studying the last verse of the chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita, in which there is a description of a devotee who achieves the goal of the life. He passes through the different stages of the life in an atmosphere of a devotion. Manmana bhava madbhaktah madhyajimam namaskuru Mameva eshyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayana. This is the verse we are going to study. If somebody asks you what are the characteristics of a devotee, well, this is a single verse. You can definitely give the whole description of a devotee. A devotee is the one who has devotion basically is a mental condition. It is not a independent entity in which there is a recognition of Ishvara, there is a Shraddha towards Ishvara, there is a reverence, there is a love. We'll be seeing that. So this is a verse we are going to study. Now we have to start from the beginning. Bhagavad Gita. What is the subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita? That itself, we should look into this again and again. The subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita is the subject matter of the Shastra, Shruti, Upanishad. That is how Bhagavad Gita, it should be actually Bhagavad Gitam. It's a song. Song is not Gita, Gitam. But it's called Gita. Because of this reason, because it has an essence of the Shruti, which is feminine word. So, since Bhagavad Gita is an also essence of the Shruti, the word is definitely in a feminine noun. It's a definitely feminine noun. So, word Bhagavad Gita has been used. Bhagavata Prokta Gita Bhagavad Gita, which hasn't been sung by the Ishvara. Out of compassion, it just came out. Looking at this Arjuna in distress, right? And well, So Bhagavad Gita basically talks about. Bhagavad Gita removes the cause of the grief. Our Arjuna also must have gone several times, he must have gained this grief. And he must have solved it like us, right? We also have, given several times in past and then we came out also. So to have a grief and to come out with a different solution, that should not be the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita talks about the cause of the grief, and removing that cause, the grief goes forever. So that's how this is a unique thing. Several solutions to come out of the grief are there in the world, but they come back again. It comes back. Anyway, okay, what is this grief? We feel that grief is just a specific emotion in the mind. It is true, sorrow. It's a specific emotion. But since we are talking about the cause also is called grief. What is the cause? Well, so the cause is a insignificance. A sense of insignificance, sense of helplessness, sense of dependency, sense of limitation centered on oneself is called grief, which itself gives rise to a particular emotion called grief in the mind. So the cause also, this is a style of the Shastra. A name of bell which is given to the effect can be given to the cause, because the cause also, like you say pot is clay, same way. So even the cause also is called with the same name, grief. So here we are talking about this grief, which is the cause of even the grief in the mind. Anyway, and Bhagavad Gita, the Shastra says, this sense of a insignificance, sense of limitation, etc., it is purely a brood of a self-ignorance, which itself gives rise to varieties of the notion regarding the self, and because of that, this grief arises. So, self-ignorance leads to self-notions, which are wrong, of course, and then about me and about the world also. And that gives rise to a grief. Well, and now let us analyze this. What is the source of a grief, sorrow? There are two things in the world. One is the self, whatever the self, we don't worry about right now. And other is the world. I am the source of a grief, sorrow, or the world is a source of a grief, sorrow. Either way, it is not possible. Either way. So suppose if I am a source of a sorrow, then there is no problem at all. I will be always sorrowful, sad. Then I will be comfortable with the sadness. There is no question of complaining about the sadness, because it's my nature. Everyone is comfortable with oneself, one's nature. And therefore, if I am the source of a sadness or a sorrow, well, I will be sorrowful all the time, then I will be comfortable with the sorrow. In fact, there will not be a complaint for the sorrow. For nature, there will not be a complaint, right? And therefore, so basically that doesn't look like. Because I am not always sorrowful. Sometimes I am happy also. Right? If I am a source of a sadness, then I will remain 24/7, multiply 365, multiply whatever the years. Like sweetness. Right? If sugar is a source of sweetness, it will be always sweet. Same way, if sadness is basically a nature of the self, you will be always sad. But you are sometimes happy also. In fact, you want to get rid of the sadness from you. And therefore, it doesn't look like. Second thing is, when we are sad, we'll be happy, as I told you. Well, but that is not the case. In fact, when I become sad, well, I become unhappy also. So that is not the criteria. A restless monkey is a healthy monkey. Pujya Swamiji's example this. He always gives this example. A restless monkey is a happy monkey. In fact, Even though, because restlessness is his nature. In fact, Puju Swami says if monkey becomes a quiet, it's a cause of a concern, in fact. And therefore, same way, if sadness is my nature, I will be happy with the sadness. In fact, Bhagavad Gita should not be there to remove the cause of sadness. Why you should remove? Because it's your nature. But that's not the case. So it doesn't look like that I is a source of a sorrow. And so they say like this, that if sorrow is our own nature, then we have no cause for the sorrow. If sorrow is my nature, then there is no cause for the sorrow. For nature, there is no cause. Fire is hot, cause. Water is cool, cause. Water is cool because it is cool. Fire is hot because it is hot. I am sad because I am sad. No. Let us find out, Swamiji, what is the cause of the sadness. So it's not nature. Clear? Okay. If I am not the source of a sadness, then what is left over is the world. Two things are there. If world is a source of a sorrow, well then world will make you unhappy all the time whenever you come in contact with the world. But that's not the case. In this world there are several people, objects which are source of joy, happiness for me. And therefore, world also does not look like that it is a source of sorrow. So anyway, so this is what we have to analyze. What is the source of a sorrow? Atma or Anatma? I or the world? What is the source of sorrow? And this analysis is the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavan says very clearly in the first, when he opens, the teaching in the 11th verse, he says that, he uses a word that Panditaha na anushochanti. The wise people, well, do not grieve. Panditaha means pandasya asti. Iti panditaha. Panda means one who knows the self. So Bhagavan says that one who knows the self, Atma, does not grieve. One who knows the self knows the non-self also, naturally. If you know the self, you equally know what is non-self. What is other than the self is non-self. So you know both. So it looks like from the 11th verse of the second chapter, Bhagavan has opened up the subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita is this Atma Anatma Viveka. Looks like, Viveka Jnanam, looks like it is a subject matter of a Bhagavad Gita. Well, somebody said no. Atma is not a source of a sorrow. Anatma is not a source of a sorrow. World is not a source of sorrow. Not I am the source of sorrow, but the mixture could be the source of sorrow. Mixture. You cannot form a mixture of Atma and Anatma. It's like forming a mixture of a light and darkness. Both are opposite in nature. Which are opposite in nature cannot be mixed together. I'm going in a very, otherwise actually there is nothing other than Atma. But we are taking that there are two entities. Let us say it that way. So Atma and Atma mixture cannot be formed, and therefore that could be the source of sorrow. That possibility also has gone. Then only possibility is there is a confusion regarding the self and non-self. That's the only possibility. Self is not known as a self and non-self is not known as a non-self. Well, self, is taken as a non-self and non-self is superimposed upon the self. Well, because of that, a limitation arises on the self, centered on the self. A sense of insignificance arises, and that could be the only reason because of the sorrow. So one should gain Atma Anatma Viveka, and Bhagavan says one who definitely gains this knowledge of the self, becomes free. Na anushochanti, becomes free from this grief, etc. He becomes free. He gains moksha. And that is our experience. Also, whenever a sense of insignificance, a sense of helplessness, a sense of dependency, a sense of limitation, we are able to drop. In any state, you drop naturally in a deep sleep state, you become happy. You drop in a waking state when somebody even, just crack a joke, or you see something which is very fabulous. And a sense of limitation, well, centered on oneself, just gets dropped, suspended for a time being. You are a happy person. Need not be your fulfilled desire. When I crack some joke and you become happy, I have not fulfilled all your desires. Your desires are all intact. It's all in a waiting list. That shows that this is the only reason. And a sense of insignificance arises due to this aviveka. And therefore Bhagavad Gita's subject matter is Atma Anatma Viveka. That is what we have to say. Now, well, who can do this viveka? I am ready. I want to get rid of this grief. Right? Who can do this? That also is a subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita. Well, person who has a good degree of a dispassion with respect to his likes and dislikes, one who does not come under the sway of likes and dislikes, who is a vairagya, we can say. Sadhan Chatushtaya Sampatti, we can say, but two qualifications are most important. One is a vairagya. Of course, born of Purushartha, Viveka, etc. We will not talk right now about that. So one is vairagya. Vairagya means you won't come under the sway of your likes and dislikes. They are there, looming in the large in your head, but they don't bother you for their fulfillment. Then you have vairagya. And the second is, well, a desire to become free from this sense of limitation, insignificance, called mumukshutvam. You want to become free from this sense. Experientially, you become free, but you don't know that you are free. Experientially, you become free. That itself opens up a possibility that I may be free, but I am taking myself bound due to some reason, due to self-ignorance, etc. So this is how, well, these two qualifications, one who possesses vairagyam, one who possesses mumukshutvam, well, is a person who can do this Atmanatma Viveka. So these two are subject matter, we can say. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam. Brahma Vidya, Atma Vidya, Atma Jnanam. And Yoga Shastra means this kind of a qualifications. Okay, this is regarding subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita. Now let us come to chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita, in which we are going to discuss this 34th verse, the last verse. See, this 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is very similar to the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and very much different from the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavan wants to show that difference between the topic of the 8th chapter and topic of the 9th chapter. He wants to show that difference. In 8th chapter, what was the topic? Well, Saguna Ishvara Upasana is a topic there. What is Saguna Ishvara Upasana? Upasana means meditation. And Saguna Ishvara means, Gunam means virtues, qualities. So one meditates upon Ishvara with all virtues, etc. And so various attributes. Maybe we having a form, maybe formless. One who possesses attributes should have a form, need not be. Like US government pervades the whole country, has a lot of attributes. It doesn't have a form, a human form. US government has a human form or this form or that form. No, it pervades the entire country, it's formless, but having attributes. So that's how Upasana of Ishvara of two types. Saguna Sakar Upasana they call, and Saguna Nirakara Upasana also. Nirakara means have no particular form, but all attributes, virtues. On having a form with virtues. Both the types of Upasana, Upasanas are there. And so one who does this Saguna Ishvara Upasana gains moksha in an indirect manner. How? Which is a topic of the 8th chapter. So, well, it is said there, a person, well, upon meditating upon a form of Ishvara or even this virtue of Ishvara throughout the life, for the sake of moksha, he does not expose himself or herself to the teaching. But he just does meditation, Ishvara Upasana. While he reaches Brahmaloka, the Prarabdha is over, when the body falls, he goes to Brahmaloka, and there Brahmaji definitely teaches that person this Vidya, Atma Jnanam gives, and that he becomes free. So knowing that, he becomes free. He does not come back. That's what Bhagavan said in 8th chapter. Anavrittim. Anavritti. Avritti means, it's a cycle of birth and death. Anavritti. Well, he does not again take a birth, which is characterized. This kind of one becomes free from this birth and death is a characteristic of moksha. In this way also we describe. And it is possible only with the knowledge that you are Brahman. When you say you are Brahman, you are no more individual. So there is a question of acquiring a body, another body, etc. Once you know that you are no more an individual, well, and entity, that individual itself has not remained to assume a body, new birth, etc. And therefore, it is possible one who knows Brahman becomes free from the cycle of birth and death. All this was pointed out in the 8th chapter. Then, after studying 8th chapter, one may conclude that one should definitely do meditation on Ishvara and Saguna Brahma, etc., to gain moksha. And therefore, so even in this life I may not get, but I may get in future. Because let me do meditation in order to gain moksha. Moksha becomes a future event. After listening to 8th chapter, we feel that. Because that Upasaka also, the meditator also has gone to the Brahmaloka, and there Brahmaji gave him a knowledge and then he became free. So we feel that moksha is a future event. And to remove that notion, Bhagavan has talked about in this chapter 9, that moksha is something which is immediate. So Brahman is something which is your nature, and therefore this has to be said very explicitly to eliminate any notion that by going to heaven or any other place one can gain moksha. And so Bhagavan, in the opening itself, in the first verse itself of the 9th chapter, says, Idam tu te pravakshami. Idam. Idam refers to Brahma Jnana. So idam means actually this. Bhagavan says this. Means he is seeing Brahma Jnanam in front, not outside. Jnanam cannot be like this. But it is very much crystallized in his mind. Why it has been crystallized in mind? Because he has already discussed, recently only discussed. From chapter 2 to chapter 8, he has discussed this Brahma Vidya, Atma Jnanam. So for Ishvara, it is just in front. So Bhagavan says, Idam pravakshami. Now I will tell you about this, I will talk about this Brahma Jnanam. And by knowing that, you will become free. Moksha is not an event of the future. And then he talked about this Brahma Jnanam from verse number 4 to verse number 10. I am going to give you an essence of that in some points. What is the first thing Bhagavan talked about this Brahman? Brahma Jnana means one knows the nature of the Brahman, Sarupa of the Brahman. Bhagavan says, Brahman otherwise we call Nirgunam Brahma, etc. I am making a distinction because in 8th chapter it is Saguna Brahma Upasana. Ishvara with Upasanas. Ishvara without attributes, virtues, etc. That is none other than Atma. That Nirgunam Brahma is, Bhagavan says, all pervasive. That's the first point. It's all pervasive. God who is located in a place is not a reality. So, we do not actually criticize the idea of a location, Kailas or Vaikuntha, etc., whatever. We require that, in fact, but that is not a reality, ultimate reality of Ishvara. So, bringing Saguna Ishvara into one's life, gives you a preparedness to know Nirgunam Brahma, as Atma, of course. But taking the Saguna Ishvara as a reality, that Ishvara is sitting somewhere in Kailas or Vaikuntha, etc., that is a mistake. Bhagavan says Ishvara is Sarvagataha, all pervasive. So idea of location has gone. This is the first point. Second point, Bhagavan says, Aham avyakta. I am not available for any sensory perception. So if anyone talks about a seeing God with the eyes, etc., we don't disagree, or we don't dismiss with that darshanam, but it is a lower order of a reality. Like, you are seeing this. No, you cannot dismiss that, that there is no clip, or you have not seen the clip. You cannot dismiss. But still it is a lower order of a reality. It is mithya, etc. Same way, this Saguna Ishvara, etc., if somebody says that I have seen a particular form of Ishvara, etc., etc., we don't dismiss that. But that is not the ultimate nature of a Ishvara. So this is the second point, Aham avyaktaha, because I am not available for any sensory perception in reality. This is the second point. Third point is, Bhagavan says, I am the cause of this mithya jagat, he says. Jagat, which is of a lower order of a reality, mithya, which is not independent. Mithya means which is not independent. In terms of existence, it all depends upon Brahman for existence. Brahman lends existence to the Jagat, all names and forms. So Bhagavan says, I am the cause of this mithya Jagat. Then he says, fourth point, that Ishvara is basically Asanga Swarupa. I am Asanga Swarupa. Nothing can contaminate me, because everything is mithya. What is mithya cannot touch the satyam. That's simple. What is mithya can never touch the satyam. Mithya cannot hide the satyam. Mithya cannot touch the satyam. Satyam will always be seen. Like a snake on a rope can never touch the rope. Never touch the rope. It is like that. If a simple example, other example, wave can never touch the water. A pot can never touch the clay. Like that. So, I am Asanga. Even though I am a cause of this mithya jagat, I pervade entire jagat, but no object can, or attributes of object can touch me, because it is mithya. I am Satyam. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya. So that is what Bhagavan said is in the fourth point. And Bhagavan gave a very beautiful example for that, example of a space. Yathakasha sthito nityam, etc., etc., vayu sarvatra gomhan. In the sixth verse, Bhagavan gives this example of the ninth chapter. Like space pervades everything, but does not get contaminated with anything. Same way, I pervade the entire creation. I am the cause of the creation. I am all pervasive, but no name and form can touch me, because they are mithya. That's the fourth point. Then fifth point is, because I can't go all the verses, and therefore I have to just give you a gist of what Bhagavan has told between verse number 4 and 10. Bhagavan says that, I am the Srushti Sthiti Laya Karanam. I am the one who is a creator of this universe. Because of me, the entire universe exists, and the whole creation resolves into me. Thus, from the rope only the snake is created. Snake is sustained by the rope. The very easiness in the snake is easiness of the rope. Right? Snake is, when you say that easiness does not belong to the snake, otherwise it is a real snake. It's a real snake. That easiness is borrowed from the rope. So this is here also, the whole creation has easiness. Everything is ease. Clip is, vayu is, akasha is, everything is. That easiness is Ishvara. Is the basis. Anyway, so Bhagavan says, I am the one who creates this universe. Because of me, the whole creation is sustained, exists right now, and unto me, whole creation resolves. And this will bring a serious question. I am the one who creates means he is a karta. So creates, verb. So he becomes a doer. He creates, he sustains, he resolves. If he is a karta, then he will be a bhokta also. Right? And then if he is a karta bhokta, he is subject to punya papa also. Then he is subject to punya papa, means like us, he also will be born and gone. Well, that cannot be. And therefore, Well, Bhagavan then says very beautifully, Maya adhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharachar. Like in the presence of the light, whole activity happens. It may be a good activity or it may be a bad activity. All happens just in presence of a light. Same way this whole creation, sustenance and dissolution happens in my presence. I am Adhyaksha. Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti. Maya basically brings out the whole creation. So this is how, these are the points. This is a Brahmajnanam Bhagavan gave between verse 4 to 10. Now question is, how this Brahmajnanam is going to help me? It's a knowledge of Brahman, that's okay. But how it is going to help me? Because before, of course, Bhagavan has said, Aham sarvesham bhutanam atma. I, the Brahman, is the self of all. And it makes sense. If Brahman is all pervasive, it has to include you. Suppose you are a conscious being, a knower, and you know the Brahman, right? Brahmajnana means Brahman is an object of your knowledge. You are a knower. If knower is different from then Brahman, knower is a conscious being, and Brahman is an object of your knowledge, Brahman is no more a conscious being. Brahman is no more a conscious being. Any object of knowledge is inert. The knower is a conscious being. If Brahman also is an object of your knowledge, when Brahman becomes inert, but Brahman is consciousness, we know also, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That's the one point. And if Brahman is all pervasive, how can knower be away from all pervasive Brahman? Every knower is separate from this Brahman, then Brahman is no more Brahman. In fact, Brahman word indicates it has been formed from the root bruh, which is big, limitlessly big. And therefore, Brahman, if it is away from the knower, well, Brahman is no more limitless. And therefore, definitely, this Brahman, which is described in this manner, all pervasive, etc., etc., Srushti, Sthiti, Laya, Karanam, etc., Asangaha, etc., all this is to be understood in the form of the self. The knower itself is Brahman. There is no Brahman other than the knower. But you said everything is Brahman. You said all pervasive. Now you say there is no Brahman other than this knower. But when knower realizes that I am no more a knower, I am Brahman, it encompasses everything. Please understand this. Anyone will know the Brahman in this way only. Right? And therefore the knower is a conscious being, Brahman is a consciousness, and it pervades the knower also. So knower realizes, I am Brahman. This is called self-knowledge. Brahmajnanam is, Atmajnanam is this manner. So right now you are Brahman. So Bhagavan says, why are you postponing to know this? Right now, most proximate. There is nothing more proximate than the self, I. Everything is away from the self. Mind is nearer to the I. Pranas and body is little away from the I. And the outside world is more away from the I. Whereas the Brahman is the most proximate, aparoksham. So therefore, you should know right now, why are you postponing? And therefore, while you are putting a lot of efforts to do meditation and throughout the life, and then you want to go to Brahmaloka, and there you will wait for Brahmaji to give you Jnanam, and there also he is going to tell the same thing, that you are Brahman. Why don't you know right now? So for that purpose, Bhagavan described in the initial portion of the 9th chapter about Brahmajnana. Because person may have a notion after listening to the 8th chapter that, let me meditate on the Ishvara to gain ultimately moksha in future, going to Brahmaloka, etc. No. Moksha is a very immediate thing. It is in the form of self. Okay. So if you want to do a few things, like making some money, etc. My question would be, why do you want to make money? If you say it is for my security or for happiness, I say this is exactly what Brahman is. This is exactly what Brahman is. And therefore you first discover that you are basically secure and happy, and then you earn money. Well, easily. You can earn money easily, in fact. Brahman is in the nature of the nature of happiness, which we call fullness, limitlessness. Brahman is well not subject to time, and therefore it's in the form of existence, and therefore most secure. Insecurity arises when you feel you're time bound. Insecurity arises because you feel you are time bound. You are subject to birth, death, and in between. Well, all the time you feel you are time bound. Your existence is going to end. Well, Brahman is the very basis of the time, truth of the time. And therefore, well, if you are seeking a happiness and security through the money, well, this is exactly what Brahman is. And therefore, may you discover that it is in the form of a self. May you discover this security and happiness, which is in the form of self. And then you can also earn money easily. Well, otherwise, after earning money also, you will discover that you are unhappiness or still unhappy that way. So first solve the problem of being unhappy, and then happy to do whatever you want to do. So you need to solve this problem first. So understand that you are Brahman, you are what you are seeking. You are seeking freedom, independence in your life, you are free. So you have what you have a value for. The reality and value are not different. You value happiness, and the reality is that you are happiness. You value peace, and the reality is that you are peace. You value freedom, and well, the reality is that you are free. You value security, and well, the reality is you are secure. So there is no distance between a value and this reality. So anyway, you are what you are seeking. It's a simple knowledge, basically. So there is no experience involved here, no particular condition of the mind to be achieved. Well, this is a direct means for moksha. Means knowing oneself as free, oneself as a Brahman, one becomes free. This is what has been told. And when you describe moksha like this, then bondage is very, very clear. So, when looks upon oneself other than Brahman, one feels bound. By knowing Brahman, you become free. Means if you take yourself to be other than Brahman, you will feel a bondage. And that is what Bhagavan said in 11th verse. He says, well, I am the one who basically obtains in the human body, but people do not recognize me as such. And they take the body as the self, take me just as the body. They conclude themselves to be just, they conclude themselves to be of the nature of body only, and therefore limitations of the body they impute upon me, the self, and well, then they suffer from all limitations, starting from mortality onwards, everything. And that is how a sense of insignificance, limitation, dependency all arises, which we have called it as a grief. So basically the self-ignorance alone is the cause of a grief. Anyway, so Bhagavan says, well, I am the one who is seated in this human body, highly worshipful, and and the one everyone is seeking in their life. I am sitting there as a self. See the irony of this. We say how the Maya works, What happens is, well, they are seeking actually me, but they are neglecting me. It's exactly like a 10th man. 10th man is seeking 10th man. He is the 10th man, but he neglects himself and searches a 10th man outside. So, this is how it is. One is searching happiness and peace and freedom and everything in the world. That's exactly one's nature is. Well, but one neglects. One disregards that. So, Bhagavan says in 11th verse here that people disregard me, not knowing my limitless nature, which is identical to oneself, which is Ishvara, Lord of everything. Well, they are really seeking me, but they don't know that they are seeking me. I am in the form of the self, they don't know. And that is how the problem of ignorance is there. And this is the issue. So one is basically seeking this kind of things, happiness, etc. It is in the nature of the self, but they don't know. Therefore, they disregard me, they neglect me and seek outside. It's a ignorance. Well, if it is not pertaining to this ignorance, if it does not pertain to the self, then it is a different issue. Like suppose if you are ignorant of an object, for instance, well, you insist that the charcoal cannot become a diamond. It's a truth, but one feel that charcoal cannot become a diamond. So then, I can perhaps educate that person, right? Show also that how a charcoal can become a diamond. Well, I can make you understand also that because of this process, this charcoal can become a diamond, because it's an object. But if you are ignorant of yourself, and while all that you seek, freedom, happiness, security, etc., happens to be yourself. If you are ignorant of yourself, and what you are seeking in your life is just happen to be yourself, how will I arrest your attention? If it is an object, I can explain you, make you understand. Throughout the life you seek, and that is nothing but just the self. How will I arrest your attention toward yourself? It's impossible. And so, how am I going to show you to yourself that what you are seeking is just yourself? And that is where something walked in. So it is not possible unless you have a Shraddha, that the self revealed in the Shastra, like in this manner, does exist. Like the 10th man, when he was searching 10th man, and then that person, old man, comes and tells, the 10th man is there, here and now. Suppose if 10th man does not agree, then old man is not going to tell, you are 10th man. Will not. First thing is that person, that boy has to accept, he should have a Shraddha in the words of that old person. That yes, the 10th man exists. It has not been lost. So same way here also, one should have a Shraddha that the self revealed in the Shastra does exist. Recognition of that self is possible only when you first recognize it as Asti Yam. It is there. And Shraddha is indispensable. Without Shraddha it won't work, because you cannot stumble upon this particular fact. You can stumble upon something. If it is an object, you can never stumble upon yourself. It needs Shraddha. That is where devotion comes. And so, if someone does not recognize actually this possibility of such a fact, in fact, he cannot accept that such a self is free, which is free from any sense of limitation, exists. And that is why always in the Shastra they say that, Ishwar anugrahat eva pumsam advaita vasana. So it is, if a person basically has an affinity for a non-duality, what I am seeking in my life, that sought and this seeker are just one alone. To have that kind of to accept that, one needs a Shraddha. That the seeker and the sought are just one alone. And therefore, it says, Ishwar anugrahat eva pumsam. For the people who have this Advaita Vasana, non-duality, seeker and sought are just one. To have that also, one needs Ishwar anugraha. One needs basically grace of Ishvara. In fact, what I was doing before I discovered this, I always manipulate the situations, right? In order to become happy or in order to become secure. And one discovers helplessness, that even after manipulating in the world several situations throughout the life, I have not gained that happiness and security. And out of that helplessness, if one takes a refuge of Ishvara, that itself is a Ishvara Anugraha. Why? Because basically it is not, one need not resort to Ishvara. It is not, someone who is in distress because of this helplessness necessarily can become a devotee. The person who is in distress can become mentally ill. Right? And therefore, if one becomes a devotee ultimately, even to come out of this helplessness of gaining security and happiness, well, it is only by some grace. If one is in distress, one need not become a devotee. One can become mentally ill also. Still, one can take a refuge of Ishvara, well, in order to solve this problem, when definitely there is a grace of Ishvara. And so, to recognize, well, that I am the whole, well, requires not just ordinary grace. Well, it requires an extraordinary grace, because what you seek is not an ordinary thing. You are seeking the whole, that is you. And therefore, definitely, one who even understands, well, accepts that this can be a possibility, that I am the seeker and the sought also is me. Without grace, even if it is told several times, well, it won't capture your attention. And if grace is there, it sounds true even when you have heard for the first time. And I'm sure many of the people who are here must have heard for the first time such a thing, seeker and sought, suppose of Pujya Swamiji or anyone. And you feel that it could be true. That's a grace. That such a self does exist. Well, and that itself is a grace of Ishvara. Somebody says, no, about the first time, even if I heard, well, it's due to samskara. But then why should you have that samskara? Why should you have that samskara? Advaita samskara was there, Swamiji, and so I felt that, yeah, what I'm seeking in my life is myself. I felt it is true. But why should you have that samskara? And therefore, it is purely due to grace of Ishvara. So everyone, well, knows that he or she is not whole. And, for that you don't require any knowledge that I am not the whole. But definitely it takes a lot of knowledge, definitely, to recognize yourself that you are the whole. And for that you need this grace. What is this grace? Is it a packet given by Ishvara? No. Grace is this viveka. Grace is this discrimination, because it is going to make you free. Atma, Anatma, Viveka only is going to make you free. And it is this Viveka. That possibility of doing Viveka is there because a human birth is given to you. A human birth is given to you, and therefore that's a possibility. And one can make use of that, the potential is there to do Viveka. One can make use of it. Well, the difference between two human beings, in which one does the Viveka, one taps that Viveka or grace, and one does not do. Right? Like the people who you are sitting here, you people are, in the process of doing this Viveka. And outside there are many people who are not doing this Viveka, even though potential is there. He is also a human being, you are also a human being. So the difference is grace. You are able to tap this grace or tap the Viveka. How? What are the Vivekas? Two, which we are going to talk about. First is a Purushartha Viveka. That itself has been told by the first word, Man Manaha. We'll talk about that. So, basically, first is a Purushartha Viveka, and second is a Atma-Anatma Viveka. Purushartha Viveka leads you to make you a qualified person for the knowledge, and Atma-Anatma Viveka, Jnanam, leads to moksha. So these are the two main Vivekas. Anyway, so in verse 34, basically Bhagavan describes of such a bhakta who has tapped this grace and ultimately gained moksha. We'll see that those characteristics. Now, in the 7th chapter, Bhagavan has talked about 4 types of bhaktas. I'm just reminding because it's a description of bhakta is going to be there. One is a artha, second is a artharthi, third is a jignasu, and fourth is a jnani. So the artha bhakta is one who is in distress, who has problems, who is in pain, and he surrenders to Ishvara. Not for the sake of Ishvara. He wants to, he has only goal of getting rid of this pain or problems. And he uses Ishvara as a means. Through Ishvara, he wants to get rid of it. But since he surrenders to Ishvara, well, for that purpose, well, we call it as a bhakta. So first is this artha bhakta. Second one is a artharthi. He does not have much issues. But basically, since there is a self-ignorance and he is having a sense of limitation, insignificance, to get rid of it, he seeks various objects in the world. Objects of security and pleasure. And for that purpose, well, he takes a refuge to Ishvara to help him. Again, Ishvara is a means. Goal is objects only. Second is artharthi. Third is a jignasu. And well, one who has done this Purushartha Viveka, and will be doing tomorrow, but one who has done this Purushartha Viveka. Purushartha Viveka means four goals are there. 1,000. Looks that there are millions of goals. One person has several goals, and there are billions of people, and therefore billions and billions of goals. No. Shastra says only 4 goals. And 4 out of that, also 3 resolves into the 1. That's the only goal. And that is artha, kama, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And therefore, artha, security. No one wants an object of security. Because any object of because my nature is independence. And therefore, for any help, if I have to resort to outside on any object, I just dislike it. So it's all, Pujya Swamiji uses the word crutches. All crutches. No one wants crutches. No one wants crutches. So even for the sake of security, I have to depend upon several things. I don't like it. Really speaking, I'm not interested in any object of security. Since that sense of insecurity is there due to identifying with this body, mind, sense complex, and I feel time bound, which is not my nature, and so I want to get rid of this sense of insecurity, I resort to various objects of security. Basically, I am interested in freedom from insecurity. Freedom. Moksha only I am interested. Well, the second Purushartha, is kama. It's also same thing. A sense of insignificance or centered on oneself, there is an uneasiness, discomfort. To remove discomfort, I need an object of happiness outside. So I want to get rid of this sense of discomfort or uneasiness, insignificance, limitation. Really speaking, I am not interested in any object. An object cannot give it all, so we'll see tomorrow. But anyway, so then, here also I am interested in freedom. Freedom from that sense of insignificance or discomfort centered on oneself. So moksha. Dharma also is basically, dharma purushartha is for future artha kama. I want to earn some punya so that in future also I may gain objects of security and pleasures. One wants to make sure that he may continue to get it even after even after this life. One wants basically all these objects of security and pleasure. How to do that for future? How can I acquire it? Well, through punya. So dharma means punya. So there also, it's also, all the 3 purushartha resolves into moksha. And even if all these 3 purusharthas I have not fulfilled, still, whenever I become experientially become free from the sense of limitation, sense of discomfort, sense of uneasiness, sense of insignificance, sense of lack, centered on oneself, I become free. That's how it is. So that freedom is just my nature. So this person is interested to know the self. He is interested to know the Ishvara. For him, Ishvara is an end, not means. For Artharthi and Artha, Ishvara is a means. They are interested in some other goals. For a Jignasu, Ishvara is the goal. And while Ishvara is known as the self, and therefore he is interested even in knowing the Ishvara also. Knowing Ishvara as the self. So it's called Jignasu, desire to know, basically. And fourth is a Jnani, one who knows that the Ishvara and I are one and identical. The distance was, the distances are of three types. A distance in time, distance in place, or distance in ignorance. Yeah, and here the distance is in terms of ignorance. Not between me and Ishvara, there is no distance in terms of time. Well, my retirement and I have a distance in terms of time. And in terms of place, I have a distance. What is there in New York and I right now am here, there is a distance in terms of place. But this is a distance in terms of ignorance. The thing is with me and yet I feel that I don't have it, like the 10th man. 10th man feels the 10th man is away somewhere. The distance between the 10th man and the 10th man is of ignorance. That's how it is. So what I am seeking in my life is just my own nature. So he wants to get rid of the ignorance, and one who gains this knowledge, get rid of self-ignorance and all self-judgments, which are nothing but errors only. And he gets rid of all these notions also. That's called moksha. So if you know yourself as a Brahman, you won't take yourself as other than Brahman. Other than Brahman, you won't take yourself as that you are bound. You are free from samsara. So all four kinds of bhaktas are there. Of course, it's a description in the 7th chapter. Out of that, we will see a bhakta who starts with Purushartha Viveka, then goes through the 2nd step, 3rd step, and finally gains one knowledge of oneness with Ishvara. We'll start the verse tomorrow. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.